speaking of Zoran, there's a new New York City mayoral general election poll from Zenith Polls and Public Progress. The most comprehensive poll of the race finds Mamdani with a commanding 28-point lead in a five-way race and getting over 50% head-to-head versus Cuomo. This is from Adam Carlson, who blocked me a long time ago, but I think he's been pretty good on this stuff. Here are some top line from the stats. 85% of young men support Zoran Mamdani. 75% of young women support Zoran Mamdani. 67% of Jewish people aged 18 to 44 support Zoran Mamdani. 65% of black people aged 18 to 44 support Zoran Mamdani. Would you have guessed any of that with how the media has covered all of this? Obviously, no poll is perfect, and you shouldn't get comfortable. But my point is, Zoran Mamdani is doing a lot better than the way the media has covered him. Post-primary poll data by Data for Progress suggests Mamdani's criticism of Israel and support for Palestinians attracted voters. Who could have told you that? Who kept repeating this over and over again? Yes, I'm going to do Crystal Ball's Slotkin interview as well, where she destroys Eliza Slotkin. 78% of Dem voters agree with Mamdani's belief that Israel was committing a genocide in Gaza, and 63% back his pledge to arrest Netanyahu. Yeah, 60% of Dems are more likely to support a candidate who doesn't visit Israel. Mamdani drew fire from his rivals for saying he wouldn't want to travel to Israel as mayor. According to the poll, 60% of Democratic Party voters, primary voters, said they are more likely to support a candidate who declines to visit Israel by citing the need to focus on local issues. I kept repeating this over and over again throughout the past election. This didn't happen overnight. This kind of enmity did not come across overnight. Seems increasingly obvious that Gaza is going to be the defining wedge issue in the 2028 Dem primary. Holy Toledo. Here is Harry Enton talking about it as well. There's more information coming out on this as well because Israel's starvation campaign is continuing. 2/3 or more of the New York City Democrat primary voters agree with Zoran Mamdani's position on Israel, including arresting Bibi. 57% say they might oppose Dems who don't endorse Mamdani for mayor. That includes party's two Brooklyn-based leaders in Congress. This is something that they are incredibly fearful of. It is not Zoran Mamdani's failure that people are fearful of. Democrats are worried that he will succeed. Democrats are worried that he has succeeded because when he succeeds, people are emboldened. Okay? When he succeeds, people go, hold up. We can demand more from our politicians. Why aren't you like him? It turns out there are people who can just say fuck Israel and still win. And I say fuck Israel. I think it's fuck Israel o'clock. Why aren't you saying it? That's it. Here's the new Gallup poll on this as well. American support for Israel's military campaign against Hamas is called to a new low, 32%. Still, 71% of Republicans approve Israel's actions in Gaza. Just 8% of Democrats back the Israeli government's war plans. 8%. And by the way, remember, Democrats were already at 18% in January. Okay? Only 18% of Democrats were in favor of Israel's actions in Gaza in January of 2024. This was always an incredibly partisan problem. The very fact that our Democrats our politicians did not actually respond to this major issue of crisis, major conflict, major moral problem is ridiculous. Who was out here? New polling commissioned by Semaphore shows how the anti-Israel craze has remade the Democrat Party. 78% of Democratic primary voters in New York City believe that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. Democrats are going to have to start deciding if they'd rather avoid criticism for AIPAC or win elections. I want you to understand something. This is why I kept saying over and over again that this was a non-starter even in the election cycle. This did not change overnight. Make no mistake, the very same problems, the very same attitude that people are now coming to recognize existed already within the Democratic Party's base of support. This is why I kept saying over and over again that Kamala Harris avoiding this issue is idiotic. Okay? Remember that. This is why I kept repeating over and over again that you can't just simply say, oh, dude, Muslims need to shut the fuck up and suck it up and vote for Kamala Harris. It's like, this is a major problem. This is a major problem for the Democrats if they don't address it. And they didn't address it, and they lost the election. They were willing to throw the election away in favor of a psychopathic fascist like Donald Trump, who would seize control of every fucking facet of government and ruin what remains of the moral fabric that holds society together, specifically so they could avoid talking about Israel. As Israel kept doing is genocide. Okay? And now you have all of these prominent Democrats finally coming to that fucking conclusion. Now you have the media finally covering this issue. I cannot repeat this enough, okay? We were fucking right from the start, and they lied about it. The media lied about it. The media obfuscated the truth. The media kept repeatedly making it seem as though there was actually a base in the Democratic Party's a base of support that demanded more in terms of defending Israel, in terms of continuing Israel's genocide. That was always bullshit. That was never real. And I kept repeating over and over and over again that if they don't care about the moral calculation here, if they didn't care about the immorality of supporting a genocide, at least they could have taken a position from a totally cynical, amoral, bloodless election-focused attitude. They could have just literally faked their support for Palestinians, specifically because they want to win the election, because it is a popular winning issue. And yet on both fronts, I kept getting yelled at. I mean, look at the pod Johns now versus like the conversation that I had leading up to the election. I want to show you something here.
And I don't think Democratic candidates should take money from AIPAC or vote to fund military support for Israel anymore. Like, I really don't. In this government, absolutely not. And that especially includes, I think, the next Democratic nominee for president.
Things I want to see Democrats at least calling for is cutting off military assistance to Israel. Yep. It's a rich country, by the way. They don't need our $3 billion a year. And hands up, right? Barack Obama signed a 10-year MOU for $3.3 billion a year. Like, so you're part of the problem here. Mm-hmm. Let's correct it. I would like to see talk about sanctioning Israeli government officials who use genocidal rhetoric or who talk about ethnic cleansing openly. We should support a ceasefire resolution at the UN. We should demand that international press be allowed into the Gaza Strip to report on what's happening without an IDF minder. It's insane. The press still can't go into Gaza and cover what's happening. And I also think, like, there has to be a total mindset change in the Democratic Party. When the war ends, we are not going back to the pre-October 7th status quo, because it's not where the party is. It's not where the world is. We're not going to shovel billions a year in military aid. We're not going to veto every effort to recognize a Palestinian state at the UN. We should not take money from AIPAC. And, like, I will hold out hope for better political leadership in the U.S. and in Israel. But we have to also recognize that the Biden era hug Bibi Netanyahu strategy has to be thrown.
Look, if you're a dude under the age of 30, this is when I was ringing the alarm bells offline with John Favreau before the election. Hasan Piker on Trump's bro strategy, right-wing media, and Harris's chance in the 2024 election. There's also a point that I make about Kamala and I think it's like here where I talk about politics, like Israel.
Because I think we could have an entire other conversation about the policy around Gaza. I think it is continues to be catastrophic policy. I think on the
genuinely trying to win every voter, you would have put a Palestinian at the DNC to come out and speak. You would have had Ruva come out and speak at the DNC and endorse Kamala Harris. You would have tried to not get into the Humphrey trap and part as best as you can, try to desperately show the American population that you're at least marginally different than Joe Biden on this issue. you wouldn't be running towards Joe Biden on this issue. That's even a more holistic problem, I think, with the Kamala Harris campaign in terms of like.
Remember, this is before the election. This is before the election. This is before the election.
Every media opportunity she has nowadays, she will be like, I'm just like Joe Biden. I am Joe Biden. I love Joe Biden. I love Dick Cheney. And the only difference I have between me and Joe Biden is that I will have a Republican in my administration. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I get that they have completely changed their messaging strategy and their strategy on the ground to like flip Republican suburb, like, you know, educated small business owner, white former Republican voters, and like flip them to go along with like a managed, a less volatile Republican framework. Like that's what they're communicating.
Yeah.
To those people.
I think okay. First of all,
but you're leaving a lot of people you're leaving a lot of people aside, is basically what I'm saying. I'm
going to separate the policy from the politics, because I think we could have an entire other conversation about the policy around Gaza. I think it continues to be catastrophic policy. I think on the politics of this would have been an.
So see, this is what I mean. Like, I think John here was like holding on to, you know, no, I much love for John Favreau. Okay. The Pod Johns have always been, have always been in welcoming to my position, even challenging their positions. Right. Is policy not politics? No. Stop. Guys, we're political commentators. What he's doing is responding to what I always do. I talk about policy and then I talk about politics. These are two separate things. Calm down. Okay? He's saying that he's separating politics and policy because I started off the conversation like this. Okay? What do I always say? I say Republicans have horrible policies, but they play good politics. Okay? As in, they set up wedge issues and they really hammer it. And obviously, the legislative agenda is bad. That's the policy side, because it's damaging to the public. But politics is different. Politics is what you focus on and how you win elections. What kind of tricks you're willing to pull in an effort to win an election. What kind of issues you even focus on. What kind of things you turn into issues to begin with. Like trans issues, right? That's politics. Banning HRT is policy. Okay? Yeah, politics is a discussion around electoral vote seeking. What gains you votes? They were under the mistaken assumption that supporting Israel would gain votes, and the proof is proven that to no longer be true. But the point I was trying to make is that these guys, for some reason, and I don't know why, because I thought this was what he's about to say here is very informative. He just pulls some information that is just completely untrue. Look.
Easy win. And they should have had a Palestinian American speak at the convention. I was just in Michigan talking to a lot of folks on the ground, some pretty progressive folks as well, who know the state really well. And they said, the challenge here is we are extremely worried about the Muslim and Arab American vote in Michigan. We are also worried about Jewish vote in Michigan as well, because there's a lot of, we're fielding calls from folks in Dearborn, folks in Ann Arbor being like, not going to vote for the Democratic ticket, and then fielding calls from folks in the suburbs being like, I'm a Jewish Democrat. I've been Democrat all my life. I can't vote for the ticket this time because they haven't been sufficient. What? I know, but this is the. I'm just telling you. I don't fucking like it.
Haaretz conducted a study that showed that Jewish Americans list Israel as their 9th priority out of 10. It's the 9th priority in the top 10. Now you might say it's because, both parties it's uniparty on Israel, and that is the case. That's directly the case. It only goes more right. Like, it's either full tilt genocide plus annexation of West Bank, which is what Donald Trump was most likely going to do, or full tilt genocide and maybe annexation of West Bank later down the line when the Republican does it and then the Democratic Party doesn't reverse that decision. So on that front, maybe that's the reason why he's uniparty, but I don't believe that. especially for young Jewish voters as well. Young Jews that are not getting the same media diet that like older voters have gotten across the board.
Definitely generational.
Yeah, have the
Very
almost
progressive.
exact same
For sure.
issue divide on Israel-Palestine. It is exactly the same with every other demographic. If you're
Remember, this is before the election. This is me talking about the issue of Palestine and how much the Democrats are fucking up and how much they have fucked up. This is a month out from the election. Okay? This is a month out from the election. This was around, this was after 1 year of Israel doing a genocide. And every single point that I brought up, immigration in the media and Kamala's campaign and all of its fucking failures, are now the number one priority amongst the media. Now everyone is saying it. Okay? Every single person has arrived at the conclusions that I brought up here. There's a reason why, regardless of what random dumb fucks online claim about my acumen, about my political perspectives or whatever, that these guys who are supposed to be like the, serious commentators have a very different opinion about what I suggest. Here's from a month ago. Great interview, and I'm watching this June after the election. And man, Hasan Piker nailed all of it. But Democrats, not even you, John, struggle to hear what he's saying. You look at it and try to manipulate every mini demographic, but you don't look at what's universal. Just now listening to this, how spot on it was. This is a month ago. Delusional men doing the nonsense blabbing. Piker is pure propaganda, not too bright, obviously. Left wing, zero common sense. Voters voted. Okay. Hasan is a terrorist supporter 5 months ago. Young people see right wing ideology every single day. The fact that people think Jake's nephew is a man of reason is pathetic. Okay, you got right wing brigaders. Whatever, bro. You're so predictable. You just say the right thing, but you say it ahead of time when it's too early for the current lib Overton window. That's it. That is what it is. Now, my expectation isn't that people take note of what I'm saying and listen to me 100%. But especially after the Zoran victory at this point, like the way I have explained how Democrats could win elections, Zoran proved. Those were the new comments, not the top comments. Those were just, I sorted the new comments. Dude fucking nailed what happened this week. People went back and watched it right after the election. Bro was spitting facts and no one in the Democratic Party was listening. My point is, what were the motives that caused, you should make a career out of this? That's funny. Yeah. If only had a career as a political commentator. My point is this, okay? What were the motives? What were the personal biases that you had leading up to the election that caused you to hear something like this and go, I don't believe it. Okay? Was phone, yeah. That's it. Because if you go back and watch that interview before the election, you will see me nail every single major point, whether it be ringing the alarm bells for young men swinging to the right dramatically, a lot worse than people thought. At that point, people weren't fully aware of this. The issue of immigration and how Democrats have communicated this problem and how it could swing and how it will swing back to a place of normalcy. But the Democrats shouldn't wait for that to happen, but instead should have early on communicated a counter message against like whatever the Republicans were presenting as like immigrants posing a problem. Yeah, Muslim voters make up 2.8% of the total Michigan electorate. Total Jewish should also be 1.2%. This discounts a big Lebanese population, Christian Arabs, but also a lot of especially younger Jews have been leading the protest movement against Israel's genocide. One Democratic strategist who's been polling Michigan told Jewish Insider, 1% of the Michigan electorate is Muslim. To watch the media talk, you'd think it was 30%. Jews comprise 2% of the Michigan electorate. Both are very small numbers, but one is twice as large as the other. Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. All of the experts in liberal media at the time said this was wrong over and over again. New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC, even the Podjahs who were more favorable to my position, and they did not listen. At a certain point, you have to realize, like, it's either one of two things. One, they're too stuck in their own echo chambers to realize that that leftist commentators are certainly Left's commentators are certainly ahead of the game here and have a better understanding of the fucking environment, both the media environment and also what regular people are demanding. Or they are deliberately avoiding talking to people like myself or listening to people like myself and responding to the demands that we are making because they don't want to win. For some, it's both. I mean, I got fucking kicked out of the DNC, remember, for this position that I have that, like, even at that point, the majority of Democratic Party voters had. Okay? They kicked me out of the DNC for the position that the overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party held. This change did not happen overnight, chat. You need to understand that could define the election. This change in attitude didn't happen overnight. It played a role in the election as well. And liberals on TikTok still try to say you didn't even get kicked out of the DNC and left on your own. I don't care. Those guys are professionally wrong, and ironically enough, they're not even paid to be wrong. They want to get paid by the Democratic Party, but they're not getting paid by the Democratic Party. So they're just wrong. That's it. But this, like, I want you to understand it. It's good that there is now like a major sea change here and an attitude shift here. Okay. Let's take a look.
You know, Benjamin Netanyahu, if you look at polling in the United States, he is lost in the court of public opinion. I want you to take a look here at his net favorable rating. It is the lowest on record, according to Gallup, and they have records going all the way back since the 1990s. What are we talking about here? Well, in April of 2019, before, obviously, Israel in Gaza and the latest war that's been going on for a long time, Benjamin Netanyahu was on the positive side at plus 13 points. Look at where he is today, minus 23 points. My goodness gracious. You look at those under the age of 35, his net favorable rating at this point, get this, 53 points underwater. My God. And this, of course, has everything to do with Israel's actions in Gaza. The American people at this particular point not exactly liking what they're seeing, and they believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is in large part responsible.
So to that point, how do Americans feel about Israel's actions in Gaza right now?
Yeah, so let's take a look at this. I mean, net approval, Israel's military acts in Gaza. You go back to November of 2023, it was on the positive side of the ledger, plus 5 points. I bet if you even go back a little bit further, it'd be a little bit higher, but Gallup only measured in November of 2023 at plus 5 points. Look at here where we are in July of 2025. Way down there at minus 28 points. Among those under the age of 35, get this, a negative 73-point net approval rating. This is all being led. All the negative opinions towards Israel and their acts in Gaza are being led by the younger folks in the electorate. Negative 73 points on the net approval rating. You rarely ever see numbers that low, and that is charging up this number, 28 points underwater. The net approval rating of Israel's military acts in Gaza. The American people do not like what they're seeing and increasingly dislike what they're seeing.
That is really a shift. And this is leading to a number of other feelings when it comes to Israel in general. As we look at that, and also questions about Palestinians and whether to recognize the state of Palestine, that's back in the news because of Emmanuel Macron. Where do we stand on some of those questions?
Yeah, so, for the longest period of time, Americans have sympathized more with the Israelis than the Palestinians. That's still the case, but it's only by plus 5. You go back to May of 2024, it was plus 17. Right after October 7th, look at this, it was plus 48. In 2017, it was plus 39 points.
The sea change is good, but don't let the media elite have a pass, brother. Holy fuck. When did I do that? They're still dropping the ball. They're still not far enough on this equation.
That is a dramatic drop. That is, what is that, a 43-point drop since the aftermath of October 7th. And again, under the age of 50, you look at those younger voters, it was plus 38 Israelis all the way back in 2017. You look now, it is plus 19 Palestinians. There has simply been a complete change of opinion on this topic, and it has been at least driven in large part by how Americans view the military actions of Israel in Gaza.
It was fascinating to see those numbers, Harry. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
What's crazy about this is that this attitude shift has taken place in spite of the delicate and, dare I say, desperate attempts of the media manufacturing consent for Israel, trying to contextualize Israel's violence, trying to make it seem like it's appropriate, like their response is appropriate, constantly bringing up constantly bringing up October 7, October 7. I think to some extent this rhetorical shift is good and fine, but buried in this exchange is, I think, going to be the compromise position that seeks to get pro-genocide establishment Dems off a lesser charge, namely the one bad man theory of pinning this all on Netanyahu. That is what I think is going to happen as well. Benjamin Netanyahu has always been the off-ramp, and I think the Democrat position is eventually going to move towards the Benjamin Netanyahu who is single-handedly responsible for all of this. 2028 primary candidates pledging not to fund Israel's military offensively is kind of meaningless. Biden pledged the same thing about Saudi Arabia in 2020 and proceeded to sell them $300 million in weapons. Track record will matter, not vague and slippery pledges. I truly wish polls in Israel showed more dissent than they actually do, but they don't. This was not one bad man. It was almost the entirety of one country, a decent percent of the U.S. population and elites in both U.S. parties. Netanyahu didn't force any of these people to do anything. It's true. Adolf Hitler wasn't the only person responsible for the Holocaust, okay? There is such a cold detachment of the issue regarding these polls. I know they're represented the shift, of course, but even if the shift didn't happen, media's role in justifying what we've seen is too glaring to ignore. I agree, but there's not anything you can do. The only thing we can do is keep up the pressure and to spread the word to the best of our ability. That is what Palestinians want out of us as well. That's it. What more can you do? The thing is, it's working. So there is no reason to give up now, because the attitude shift will create even more pressure. And once there's more pressure and it becomes an even more unavoidable issue, people have to change their attitudes on the political front, because now it's bad politics. Once it's bad politics and politicians actually create an even larger permission structure to say fuck Israel, okay, that movement will only grow. Do you understand? We are already seeing the rats jump ship. Only 13% of New York City voters don't think Israel is committing a genocide. And for months, the New York Times would throw out Mamdani's position Israel was committing a genocide like it was a fringe far-left neurosis, not once mentioning is the position of the Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, Doctors Without Borders, and most genocide scholars. People watching countless images of child maiming and killing for almost 2 years respond by being very angry at the party doing it. It must be hate and a craze, and not a normal response to feeling powerless in the face of unspeakable horrors paid with your tax money. Okay? It is not a craze. Olivia Reingold tries to claim that it's a craze because she writes for the Free Press. It's not a craze at all. It is not a fringe position at all. That's it. Anti-Israel fervor was a major factor behind the support for Zoran Mamdani. I gave out free ball as a ball knower. Okay? I gave it out for free. Nobody wanted to listen to it before the election, and people barely listened to it after the election. It's that simple. I don't know what else to say. Mamdani's answer to what country would you visit first as mayor was a watershed moment in the primary. His response, I plan to stay in New York, came after several of his colleagues one by one said Israel. Pundits cried foul, but normal people agree with Zoran. This is why all those fucking dumbass liberals who spend a bunch of time talking about, like, is Hasan a more dangerous prospect for American future than Donald Trump or whatever, are focused on idiotic hypotheticals that try to present someone like myself as like a pure evil force in American politics, because they're deeply unserious people, because they can't talk about the fucking fact that they've spent the last 22 months defending Israel's genocide and defending Israel's actions that are now starving children in broad daylight in a way that every American sees and understands and is responding negatively to. Okay? So stop paying attention to fucking dumb losers who openly showcase their moral depravity, who openly showcase how deeply unserious they are, who are basically professionally wrong. And it's ironic because they're not even professionally wrong and getting paid to be wrong. They're just wrong. They're just professionally wrong, desperately holding on to this idea, this notion that, like, centrist liberalism is going to have a major staying power. That's it. If you want to keep being wrong, but have your opinion, if you want to not have your opinions be challenged, not have your worldview called into question, and if you don't want to actually critically examine why you believe certain things, yeah, go there. Be sedated by people who are wrong all the time. Okay? Be dulled by people who are wrong all the time. And then when an election comes in, when an election takes place, and then the reality that these guys present to you is very different than the outcome of an election, you will find yourself confused. You'll be like, "What? How could this have happened? How could this have ever happened?" Well, it's because those people left you astray. That's it. Some people choose to listen to people who agree with them, who present them a false reality. But if you actually want to if you want to understand what's truly going on, sometimes you have to challenge your previous expectations, your previous opinions. You have to have those opinions be challenged. Okay? I'm biased, but I always care about the truth, and I will critically examine my own personal opinions as well. I will always look at what liberals are saying, what Republicans are saying. I will always examine what the narrative is from all sides of the American spectrum of politics. That is the reason why I am right more often than I am wrong. That's it. You can keep trying to shift the blame over and say, "Oh, the people that were correct early, that were ringing the alarm bells ahead of time and saying if Kamala doesn't change trajectory, she's going to lose, were actually responsible for her demise." Or you can look within and try to identify why you were so resentful of people who were trying to lead the party in the right direction. Okay?